Hello and welcome back to the studio. Today we're going to be working on a watercolor painting of a palm tree. It's this painting, only this is an acrylic. So we're going to, basically I'm going to repaint the same thing I've already done, but with a watercolor process. So you can kind of compare the two, they're very different. I use acrylic primarily in the studio and absolutely love it for its qualities. And then I use watercolor more when I'm out and about. It's just really, really handy. But now and then I really do like to do some watercolor in the studio because you just have a lot different control and you can work bigger, etc., etc. So if that interests you, let's dive on in to a watercolor palm tree painting. This would be great for beginners because I'm going to start from the very beginning, from the drawing. I'm going to break it down so it's super simple, and so you'll be guided through it so you can kind of relax and not think too hard with this one. All right, so we're going to start with a sketch. I'm using my Prismacolor watercolor in Poppy Red. It's just sort of a tropical bright color, and you don't have to use a watercolor pencil. You could easily just do this in very light graphite. Anything like an HB or lighter, 2B is okay fine. It's okay fine. It is fine too, and by that I just mean like a regular school pencil. So we're going to be kind of loose with this and not stress about the composition so much, but we can see that I think one of the trunks of the tree starts in exactly the corner. We're not going to do that. We're going to move it over a little bit. So it's going to come out of the corner, but not directly like have one side of that trunk hit the corner. That's just a bit awkward compositionally. And then the next trunk is going to come up from here. And can't zoom in too much, but hopefully you'll be able to see this because I am using something darker than a light graphite. What I like about this is I can draw it darker for you to see it, but it will kind of fit the whole drawing vibe because it's like this red-orange, and it'll blend too because it's watercolor. So I'm going to bring, when I'm doing trees, always go from the bottom up as if you were growing. It just helps make it look more natural. So I'm going to grow this left palm. On more of an angle than that, and I do have just a regular eraser. Doesn't work really well with watercolor pencil, but that's okay. I'm gonna come up here and I'm going to sort of do a light circle there. That's where this palm tree's top is, and the other one I would say is kind of like here. So that's our destination. So we want to come up like this. And it's okay that it's wobbly. I don't have a very steady hand, and that's okay. It helps make things look more natural. So don't stress. And then once we're up here, let's start taking some of the fronds out. And it's going to be very interesting that we're doing the fronds in green, but they're outlined in this red. That'll be kind of interesting to see what happens. I'm correcting as I go when I see I've made something way too large. And part of that, what I'm doing is I'm breaking this in two. So you could graph it and actually break your drawing up smaller and just kind of do a grid. I'm looking at the reference right now and I see that this first frond is kind of landing in the center of the page. So I might have already taken it too far left. That's fine, it's okay. We will survive. And this one comes down right here. And then we have one coming down behind the tree, like right here. And it's going behind this one too, just a little. And then here we have some sort of awkward growth. It's really dark, it's really in shadow, so I'm not going to worry about it too much. I do know that out here another one's going that way, but these arcs like start in the center and go out, and it'll be a lot more natural. So I'm going to bring one of these out that way, and then there's a big one going down behind. Let's bring that one out here, like this. So grab the center of the frond and go from there. And then you can add the kind of the individual blades around it. This one comes up like this, and not sure it's the same frond. I think there's like layers here. So I think this one comes down, but then there's another one in the background going whoop. So we'll just kind of lump them in together because that's what we're seeing. We aren't trying to make sense of this. This is a hodgepodge of different fronds coming down, and that's not, our goal isn't to make sense of it, it's just to draw what we actually see. So from here, so I was standing drawing this so far, and it just helped me get a bit more perspective on it, which is kind of helpful. There's definitely one that starts up here. It's kind of a light patch. I'm trying to look for shapes instead of you know, trying to make sense of it. Just look for shapes. So this is the really light square of yellow, and then the goal is that that ends up down here. So make a little mark for yourself and you know where you're going. And then just try to make it natural and smooth. Oops. And it's larger at the top and goes thinner down here. There's a little bit coming out on the left side, and definitely some stuff coming out on the right. A layer back there. Maybe this is the other side coming down. Can't quite tell. There's another yellow frond coming down behind here, and it's making a kind of a long rectangular shape. More frondy fronds back here. So they're basically just going to be going out like that. If I had a green pencil, I would be drawing them in right now. I keep standing up because I need a little bit more perspective. I think I made this way too high. I think it should be right about here. Can I correct at this point? You could correct a little, but it would change where these are coming from. So I'm not going to worry about it. Mistakes happen. And I think it's more important to make the drawing work rather than have it perfectly accurate to the resource. Nobody's going to see the resource when they're looking at your painting, so just make a good painting. Right? This one's going to come up straight up here. Got fronds here. Then we've got some interesting stuff going on. We got bright section there going up, bright section here going up. And then it's just such a mess of fronds. We've got some yellow coming down here and here. And then the end of one of the fronds is right there. So we will end up, there's such a unique, interesting shape, palm tree branches. And this one's gonna go right off the side. Curves at the far left side, and there's one behind it that kind of goes to about here. So we have the main arc of all of the fronds in now. There's not much happening up here. This is all dark because there's just so many layers happening. So as long as I have the main arches going, I think we'll be fine. So now I'm going to start with our lightest light. So I'm going to put the red pencil away. I'm not someone who uses resist anywhere, so I think this one will be really interesting to do with palm trees. It is a dagger, so it's got a really unique shape to the top of it. And what else do you think we need? Let's pull out all my old faithfuls. I'm going to use, normally I use all these Velvet Touches, but I recently got this Princeton Neptune, so I think I'm going to replace my 8 with that one. And I'm going to start at the lightest light, which is my yellow. So I'm going to try to use more, like bigger brushes and not be finicky with this and let mistakes happen. And what Liz Steele calls watercolor magic, or I think she calls it magic. Does she call it magic? Someone tell me if you know Liz Steele, if she calls it watercolor magic, I forget. Where you just let things happen. Now there's not a lot of yellow in my acrylic version of this painting, and that's fine. Trying to control my water here. I'm looking at the resource. I'm looking for only places where the yellow is, because I don't want to, I'm kind of marking them. Nothing will go over these. They will stay nice and bright and yellow. Part of our lighter values in the whole painting. Remember, you can screw up color. It doesn't matter. Value matters. So you can make this palm tree purple and pink, like a completely different colors than what I'm doing, and it'll work. You can see that there's some peach happening because of the watercolor pencil crayon that I put down first, and I'm loving it. Don't mind that at all. I'm bringing yellow down the side of this entire palm tree, the one that's on the right, the bigger one. And I'm just going down half of the trunk. I'm not doing the other half. And then that's all the yellow I see pretty much. After that I see, and I did this yellow really thin, so there's a lot of white showing through, which makes it just a lighter value. We don't want it super dark. Then I'm going to, maybe there's a tiny bit more yellow right here, this little arch, and maybe a bit here, but it's not even really yellow. It's kind of turning orange, or peach, which is absolutely fine. Actually, I want that to happen here. I'm going to scrub it a little bit because it looks really nice. Get some of that red. And then for the next little bright area, all of this right here, I'm going to mix a bit of orange. I'm going to mix a little bit of this red, this bright red in. Oh my gosh, okay. Because I see that as being definitely not as yellow, but also a very light value in here, hidden among all the dark trees. So that's why I'm doing it next, because it's rather light value. And there's a bit of a darker yellow, maybe more of an ochre, coming down the side of this tree. And down here, it's kind of making some triangular shapes. Coming down the side and creeping over. And by doing this, I'll preserve these. I'll see these shapes later and hopefully maintain some of the lighter value there instead of going over it. So it's kind of nice, and it is important to block in a little bit right away. I see some orange right up here. Where else do we see orange? So I'm like hopping all over the painting. You can always pause. I'm painting pretty fast. So if you need to, you can pause a little bit. I'm going to drop some orange, a little more water, so I'm a little less in control. And I'm going to drop some orange down the side of this so it's kind of more textured and a little more interesting. There's going to be more than one color going on. I'm going to do the same up here where all these pieces join. I'm going to selectively drop in some red in places. And I don't need to get the color right. Remember, I'm just getting the value right. Now, in and around this sort of clump here, it gets kind of dark, and I'm going to push the darks instead of just going brown. This is a really fun picture and I'm feeling very summery, I'm going to push it into purple. I think that'll just be a bit more interesting. So this is kind of like a weird plum color, like wine almost, but not as burgundy. And this is what I'm using for some of the darks, and I will definitely go over it later, but I'm hopping in with a bit too dark a value right now. I'm getting ahead of myself. Sometimes I do that. I just work on one area, but I'm going to try to break that habit right now, right away. And I'm going to say, let's block in some of our lights around the painting. So let's switch to a bigger brush. I'm going to go for, do I want this one? I'm like testing out what it's going to do shape-wise. This one could be really fun. Should we try the mop? Oh my goodness, we're gonna try the mop. Okay, so getting lots of paint on my mop. I'm going to try to first lay in a bit of yellow down here. And if you want to do wet on wet, then you can drop in some near clear water on the paper right now. This is holding so much, so you will, if you don't have a big mop like this, you might have a tiny bit of a different process than what I'm doing right now, but I'm trying to wet the whole area down a little bit, and I think it will be a lot prettier, a lot more blended. So I'm doing even in between the trees here and over on this side. And do I want to go all the way up here? I'm going to creep up here a little. I'm just using water, you can't see it, but I'm going to go all the way up here. And then we'll worry about the top later. It's kind of a different color anyway. Now that this is wet, I want to immediately go in and I want to make a peach. I feel like that's the most exciting color. And I'm okay with the brush strokes showing. My reference is really kind of splotchy, so we're good with that. Got yellow and orange down at the bottom more, and more peach up through here. So I'm gonna be a little brave. I'm just going to be bold with it, drop down a ton. And we're gonna have to let this dry before we paint anything nearby. Try not to get too finicky with it. I'm not the best watercolorist because I mean, everybody tends to get finicky. And the goal is to learn to master it enough that it can be sort of impromptu, like more spontaneous. Like know how to let go of control and control just enough that you're making a painting, but you're not really making all the choices. If you made all the choices, it'd be a pretty boring method, right? Like watercolor is fantastic because it's so wild. It just does nutso things that like acrylic doesn't do, not even oil. So I'm dropping a little bit more pink in here now and just going straight across the whole painting with the pink, almost like it's a streak in the sky. I'm gonna bring it down a little more here on this side. And that, see how weird that, there's some weird stuff happening now, which is perfect. We want that. And I'm going to, I want to intensify the yellow just a little below. Woo! Oh, baby. Yeah, you intensified it. Whoops. Just painted on the tree trunk. I'm not trying to do that. I'm trying to do the sky around it. So now is a good time, if you've laid on too much, you can always grab a paper towel, and it kind of makes some pretty cool cloud shapes, and you could just kind of hop along. But I'm going to try not to mess with it too much because it was doing pretty cool things. But if you want more texture, that option is available to you. While this is still wet, I'm still using the mop because it holds so much water, and I'm going to come in with a light, this is my travel watercolor palette, and I'm much more used to using these colors, so I think I'm going to grab this sort of cobalt blue, I think it's cobalt blue, and a little bit of magenta, quinacridone maybe? I forget what's beside it, but I can always answer your questions if you have them. You can look it up and put them in the comments below. But I'm dropping in some purple. I'm kind of trying to carry it across the sky. And we don't want, like, once we paint the fronds on, we don't want all these weird gaps. So we're going to have to kind of go over where the fronds are, and then like once it dries, it'll be fine. We can paint right over it. But I think that it might be important to get a bit more coverage because I've been kind of going around these shapes. But that could be really interesting though, is having like a little bit of a white halo around some of the stuff. This purple really turned out, it's gorgeous, but I'm going to push a little bit more blue as we get higher into the sky. I got rid of that little white spot, which is kind of a shame, like it looked really cool, but I'm pulling the paint off by just drying my brush and then sliding it across, and it actually lifts some of the paint off. See, I'm not sure how much of this white space I want, or if I want things to kind of blend together. It's the sky, so I don't think I want like big gobs of white. Back here though, gotta clean my brush and lift that back up. Back here though, the sky really is white. It's maybe oh so slightly blue, so I'm going to use this cobalt teal blue color, and I'm going to dilute it so much. I'm going to use so much water here, and then lay it between the trees. Oh, it's turning a little bit pink because of that watercolor pencil we use. It's fine. I'm going to just lay it in there so that there's some color. It's not like white paper that looks like I just forgot to paint it. So I'm just going to lay in a color. It kind of looks purple, which is fine. It's a sunset painting. I'm cool with that. I don't know how I would accomplish this without this mop. In the past, I really didn't have a mop, and so this painting would have probably been maybe half the size, because you really do need bigger brushes for a bigger space. You do. You can't use a tiny little brush and get the same sort of loose feel. 10 million more strokes in there, so just kind of spreading color up in behind all the fronds. And if I miss some spaces, that's fine. They'll kind of glint through in white, which we decided wouldn't be the end of the world. So I'm going to lift a bit of that off. This looks kind of psychedelic and weird. I don't know what's happening over here. Let me just add a little pink so it doesn't feel like I ruined it over here. There's some weird like blooming happening. Traditional watercolorists sometimes don't want that happening, but nowadays you can even buy paint that's like extra granulating, and it's meant to just do that crazy, the pigments break up. They don't really mix in the actual paint. They, within even one color, you lay it down and then the pigments separate. It's so cool. So look up super granulation or super granulated. There's a whole line by Daniel Smith, watercolor. So notice right now I'm done with the mop and it's clean, and I've kind of dabbed it on my paper towel, and now I'm just reshaping it. This is important to your brush health, is reshape it, be nice to it, and then lay it sideways so it's not dripping, like drying by moisture going into the ferrule. So this is crazy cool. I'm wondering if I should be impatient and bold and start painting in the tree already, or if I need to wait and let it dry. I think we're going to continue painting even though it isn't completely dry, because that's how adventurous I'm feeling today. I'm going to use a 4 here. Is this a 4? Is this a 6? This is a 6. Round. I feel like I'm gonna sneeze. I'm mixing a sky blue that's quite bold, and I'm going to lay it in anywhere I see blue. It's also quite a light value, so by doing this, I'm kind of preserving this light blue color. I don't want to go over it with dark green and lose it completely. So I'm seeing it kind of in between I'm seeing it in between the fronds. It's kind of glowing through. And this color is like wacky. It does kind of do crazy things when you lay it on something that's already wet. So I'm just letting it, I'm letting it do weird things. Okay with that. All the way back here, maybe along the edges. That's looking a bit too. See, going one way wasn't working, so I kind of had to go the other direction. Normally from the center out is the way I would go, but it's leaving kind of blobs of color at the end, and I want the ends to look really more piercing, more sharp, more thin. So reverse that and go from the out in, like from the outside towards the, like, you know what I'm trying to say. You can see me doing it too. I'm going from the outside in towards the main stem, I guess. And see how I'm not being very careful with it? I'm staying loose. This has to feel loose and free and happy and summery. We don't want it to feel like tight and controlled, and there's a time and a place for that, and it's not today. So I've got an even brighter, sort of a teal, dropping it in. I see some up here. Almost knocked over my water. Don't do that. And I gotta address, there's a bunch more in here, a bunch more blue coming through. Ooh, there it worked, going from the inside towards the outer edges. That worked. See how pointy they are? Thanks to the round. I can't achieve that over here because it's just too wet, so it's doing crazy stuff, but anywhere you see blue, a little glow happening. We're going to go over this in dark green, but we want to establish the glowy light first. I'm putting it almost more places than I see it, just because it'll give some contrast, and I don't know, I don't want the whole thing to end up like really dark green. Kind of love the pastel rainbow explosion that's happening right now. Definitely not as much teal up here as I'm putting in. And I almost see no blue around this frond or this one or this one. It's kind of lower. Yeah, I think that's about as much as I'm seeing for the blue. And so it's kind of, we're loose when we lay it down, but it's methodical in what we're choosing to do next. So we've done the light blue. Do we go to a bit of a darker blue next? Yes, that's what we do. That's exactly what we do. So get your cobalt out, maybe get some ultramarine in there, because this one is going to be, I mean, it's not like a realistic color. It's just a beautiful next step. And I do see this color kind of strewn throughout. No. I was thinking about laying this blue down as my shadow on the tree trunks, but I'm not sure yet. Just a lot of crossing, I think, will help make this look really layered. So this is all green in here, but why not start adding more of this blue in? Up here, the blue is actually the sky. It's blue and purple. This is dark green, the spot that I'm painting in right now, but I don't see any problem in laying down the blue first and then going back over. If you left spots of white and now you're laying in dark on top, you do get this like nice glow. Whereas if you're laying this on top of something where you already painted the sky, it's much more muted, it's soft, there's less of a glow, and it's more just like a layering. So I find that interesting. One's not better than the other. Keep in mind, I'm not a traditional watercolorist. I'm just someone who taught myself and have done it for decades now, but usually on a small scale, not this big. Ooh, look at the splotches that happen there. Maybe we should do more splotches. It's in this beautiful, let's make this beautiful sort of tropical watercolor. I could just dun, 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 dun. Bold. Yikes. That was fun. And impromptu. Oh, throwing my stuff. I'm going to use the dagger now. I'm going to put my other brushes up and I'm going to use the 1/4" dagger. I really wanted a 1/2 inch or a full inch dagger, but the store was sold out. And I'm going to mix a really dark green. This is Perylene green. Activating it. And I'm going to mix it in this dark well here because there's already green there. It's easy to activate. It's a really good quality green. See how dark that is? And I'm thinking what we do so that it's not just like foresty green, because we want this to stay tropical, is maybe mix some of this red in with it and it'll kind of turn it brown, but purpley brown. Yeah, it's almost black. Oof, I like that. Okay. And now we're going to start being kind of brave with, I see it needs to be bigger. It's so small. We're going to be brave with our brush strokes. And there's just a lot of black in here. And by laying it in kind of quick and loose, I'm getting little gaps, little white areas, which is perfect. We want that. It's a bit of a jump to go from that blue to this dark, dark green. I see another green in there that might be worthwhile. I'm changing my mind, that's allowed. Activating whatever's in this pan here. And I'm thinking of kind of getting a bit of a mid-tone green going before I go to that really dark. Ooh, and let's bring in this phthalo. I know it's super intense, but I'll get that middle green so that it can glow through as well. This is making such tiny little marks. It's nice. But there is a lot of green up here that I'm seeing. And so I'm glad I caught myself and we're doing a middle step in here so that some of this green shows through. There's some yellow up there that I kind of missed in our very first pass. So I'm getting the ochre out and adding that in now. They're just some fronds that have changed color. They're maybe dying, they're a little yellow. And there's more in there than I thought there was, so I'm gonna add a bit more. Where else do we see yellow? Maybe a tiny bit through here. Now I'm kind of working simultaneously with the dark and the lighter green because they'll blend and some crazy stuff might happen, and we're okay with that. That'd be really nice. Notice how if I switch to using the side of my brush, I get massive, like really broad strokes. So this brush is really versatile because it gets you really broad and really thin strokes. So this is more of a purple that I'm laying in right now because I mixed the Perylene green with I think it's quinacridone magenta. Wrote it down somewhere. I see a lot of purple through here. On the fronds here, there's like right where they meet the stem, there's white showing through. There's like a little halo. So try to maintain that white that's right next to, it's not on a lot of the fronds, but like this one down here and this one up here, you can see when it's right near the stem that there's like, you know what I'm trying to say? That it has some light showing through at the very center. So in order to emphasize that, I kind of went sideways and connected a bunch of these fronds where they are kind of in the middle and left them separated right near the stem and then a bit lower below. This needs to be more green. There's a crisscrossing happening here. Ooh, that's like a nice sort of cross-hatching look because of the way this branch overlaps the other one. It's coming down here in clumps. See this? So let's try to get some of those clumps. It's almost like eyelashes, like clumpy mascara. They're getting kind of stuck together and then they're separated at the outer edge. Yeah, I'm loving the way that looks. We're onto something here. Adding a bit more red for this side. And I see actually two different fronds coming up. Fronds, I think I'm using the right word. I should have checked. You know, branches. And then this is a big kind of solid chunk. And just pull the leaves out from it. I'm not really using black anywhere. I don't really have black. I think the Schmincke set came with a black in here, but I'm not using it. I think that the Perylene green is like the best substitute, especially if you're someone who loves landscapes like me. You'll get a lot of use out of it. Don't water down too much if you're trying to get the darks. Good, bleed into there. Ooh, it's nice. The balance, the special dance between control and mistake or magic. It's very interesting. So this whole area is really dark. So let's start with the green. And then we will layer the purple on top in spots. So there's a chunk here. I'm looking at just big chunks of color, and there's a bit of a gap with some things going through it. And then there's another chunk like this. And this whole area, same thing. Comes down like this. I'm just dropping the purpley green, purpley black into the darkest spots and letting it bleed out. Because that looks really flat, like that dark green. So layering some stuff inside, I think will just help it look more alive. I don't know if I can control this enough going down the tree branch. Do I want to? I think I might switch to my 8 round. I have a lot more control with it, and I'm going to mix in some burnt umber to get a little bit more of a brown, like a warm dark. The purple was kind of warm, but this is a little more brown. And I'm just gonna drag it down here, going in. This is kind of awkward, and I feel like this can kind of make or break the painting. Just try not to get too scared of it. I give you the advice that I'm trying to follow myself. Just take it all the way down. Half of this trunk is in a shadow. I'm gonna do one solid streak out, and then I'm going to do like a couple of cuts in, which is what I see on the resource. Don't space them equally. Don't do that. Just random. And then up here, they become more. They go kind of right across the whole trunk, and there becomes less and less light showing. I think that turned out okay. Dropping a bit more dark in, and we've got some stuff happening up here that's really nice. I think we should just start up there and work our way down. At this point, we're not jumping around quite as much everywhere, but we have a lot of darks to lay in. So let's, I wonder if this round is going to serve me, or if I need to switch back to that dagger. I just splattered a little, and yay, who cares? It's awesome. There's some light showing through here, but not a lot. Yeah, I don't know about this brush. But you might have a round. You might only have a round, so it might be helpful to watch how I manipulate it. Let's hold it instead of holding it up close like a pencil. Let's hold it back a little further to try to get some more, I don't know, like, what's the word I'm looking for? Like less controlled, spontaneous looking. All right, so I've mixed a bit of a lighter green. And I'm trying to tell myself to hold the brush back a little further, have a little less control over it. Because if we're too uniform, things in nature that we're painting, they won't look as real. They will look sort of false, you know, like fake plants or something. That you can't have uniform. You need to not be uniform when you're painting anything or drawing anything from nature. That's kind of nice, the layering over. We had a dark color down, but then we layered green over top. It's kind of a nice effect. I'm changing the angle of some of these because I'm trying to give the impression of branches behind. I'm speeding up a little bit, and just the change of pace should help me stay more loose. I think the very last step I will do is I will go in and like drop dark purple in throughout. Right now we're kind of doing green and we're going from top to bottom, so I'm not going to forget that I need to add a bit more up here. It's looking a little messy, finicky. Like I'm not sure, maybe, you know, how we did with the acrylic painting. I'm not sure if we need to sort of break things into color patches and not have white showing through everywhere, have it very selectively showing through. This sounds like a very good plan. Good job, Jessie. Okay, so dark green, and we're going to look for wherever there is solid color in our reference. I mean, the reference looks messy and busy too, but don't go over your yellow. But I'm thinking we need to just, like, there's barely any white showing through here on the reference, so we need to kind of say goodbye to that. And this, having some solid areas of solid value or color will hopefully calm it down a little and let our eye just kind of peacefully meander through. And so I'm looking for blocks, shapes, and not thinking about where the fronds are. Just really like, okay, there's a bit of white there, but there's absolutely no white right here. It's all just solid green. This whole area is solid and it's looking way too light right now. But let's color in. Color. It's just coloring. We've got the bare bones in already. That's what's lovely about tree paintings, is that you aren't actually trying to represent anything really in high detail. Okay, I just messed up. So when we first drew this down, we put that light blue arch, and that's such a beautiful part of the palm tree that I don't want to mess up. So I'm gonna go back to the blue, and this time I'm gonna mix a bit of green in with it. So we got like a dark teal color, and I'm gonna go up on either side of this frond and just pull my leaves out from it. Let's get a bit of black in there, or dark green. But I wanted to keep some light in there. It didn't preserve it perfectly, but it's okay. Better than it was a second ago. Tiny bit of orange in there, and then this is all solid, dark green, black, purple, whatever. So try not to water your paint down too much when we're doing these dark values. In my palette here, you can see there's a lot of pigment, not too much water. It's like wet enough to move around, but we really don't want it to be, it will dry even lighter than what we're laying down, right? So Remember that, it will dry even lighter. So I see a little gap of color or light here, and then this one comes out. And the fronds are kind of bent, which is kind of beautiful. And then solid. Solid, solid, solid. Be bold, be brave. You have to wet your brush to activate more paint on from your well, but then don't wet it too much. Solid, solid, solid. Layering in more dark. You know what I think I'm gonna end up doing is I think I'm gonna make more of the trunk dark. Just because that's my least favorite part of the acrylic version. So there's another benefit of doing a painting twice, is you get to make those choices. No, it's not what I'm seeing in the reference, but I don't care. If it looks a bit funky, it's up to me to change it. So layering this green over here. Yeah, I'm going to pull like a darker orange down the whole trunk and see what happens. Things are gonna bleed, it's gonna be messy and fun. Still kind of working top to bottom. I don't feel like the sky is a deliberate enough of a color, so it kind of looks like I forgot that spot, so we'll have to go back in and do something about that. Got some yellow in here, and it's going to be kind of turning to orange, and then as it gets down here to dark, dark, dark. And then there's a shape here, right? It's less about the fronds and more about the shape. I like that shape, good job. It's not perfect. How many times have you heard me say it is not perfect? There's another sort of cross here where I see a lot of solid chunks. And it goes underneath this yellow. And I think I'm going to do sort of like a browny orange right here. So I'm leaving some yellow, but not a ton. And I kind of put a bit more yellow on my brush to darken it and drag it around. Same thing needs to happen here. That's really light. And it's not actually that light. Ooh, look at the bleeding in from the... This might be the time to do my orange, mucky orange. Ooh, that's nice. Just taking away a bit of the light on there. I don't want to overwork it, and it's kind of what's happening. Getting a stronger yellow. Because it's not very white. It's not like a lemon yellow. It's kind of more golden. I'm enjoying that. What are we going to do with this branch here? It's kind of somewhat gold. and somewhat green. So I'm gonna layer gold on first, then I'm gonna go over it with green, and it's gonna bleed. And we're good with that. It's interesting. So still trying to think, I'm not necessarily succeeding, but I'm still trying to think in terms of big blocks of color. So the end of this branch here. Is a bit of a clump. And definitely around here. So we're finally making our way down to the bottom. There's a lot of blue in there, which would be nice to show through. And I see purple, but you might see a totally different color, which is totally fine. And I want to preserve this stem at the center. So I'm trying to leave that white a little bit. Leaving some gaps. And definitely doing some solid chunks through there. This one comes down, it's kind of orange, and it's also just dark. Might be dead, I don't know. It's just the weird angle we're looking at it. And then let's get going with our purple. I really like the purple, even though you might not see purple in here. It's kind of fun. I hear a howling, but I think it's the neighbor's dog. Nice, gonna get some of that pinky purple up into here. And just a second to get some bright rusty orange and just drop it in there. Boom, like really boom, boom, boom. Just some chunks of vibrancy. Put a bit in here. That makes it a lot less boring, right? I think so. Alrighty, we are nearing the end. Let's get this last frondy frond in here. And it's on both sides. It is kind of solid right here, and then there we go, kind of like a, I don't even know how to describe this shape, like a feather. And let's get some brown and mix it in with our red to create really, really dark burgundy color for the trunk here. Okay, so I need to address this part of the trunk. I'm gonna try to make like a nice rust orange and just bring it down, kind of yellow almost. I know light is hitting it. In fact, it's supposed to be lighter than the background, but I don't know if I really want to mess with the background. I kind of like what the clouds are doing. So I have a couple options. I could go in with gouache or even acrylic after and add some light patches. I could just lift some off to get, I think value matters more than color here, so I'm lifting a bit off to get some value back, or light value back. And then I will just add in the background again a little fiercer than it was before. It's fine. There's allowed to be like a bit of an element of abstraction going on. So let's get the very light, making sure my brush is clean because after purple, using the blue is going to mucky it up. But I just want to get a little bit of a light blue value in there. And maybe in here too. Just glowing through a little bit so it looks like I didn't forget about the sky. We still want it to be a really light value, but I don't want it to look like I forgot. Now, if we take a step back, it's a perfect time to kind of step back and look at what the thing looks like as a whole. And I'm loving the difference. Like if you blur your eyes, there's a lot of light value in here and then some dark happening right in here. Like I see those dark chunks and I think that's really successful. Whereas up here, it's all kind of like either light or one value. So I need to add darker chunks up top. It might be the time to switch to a bigger brush, have a little less control. Maybe I could use the dagger. I'm just gonna keep with my 8 round and I'm going to try mixing. Let's see, why not mix another entirely different color? This painting is crazy enough, right? So why not? Why not? I'm doing ultramarine blue, which is a dark value, and I'm gonna add the perylene green, and wow, is that nice and dark. Okay, so then I'm just going to try not to be too fiddly, and I'm gonna try to brush in. I need it even darker. So I might add a bit of shadow violet, bit of red. These are like my darkest colors I could possibly have, and they're more exciting and interesting than black. Often black leans to one or the other sides anyway, in terms of color, like hue. Black will be like a red black, or black will be a blue black. So having kind of this purpley black is pretty much what you're gonna get, only a little more interesting if you bought a black paint. That's just how my teachers taught me in undergrad, even since undergrad, is don't even bother with black because you're more likely to deaden your painting. How's that looking? Nice and dark, right? So I'm being very careful with how much water I add to my brush. I'm just adding enough to like activate a little from the well and carry it over, but it's really, really pasty in here. Otherwise, we're gonna layer and layer and layer, and eventually the page is gonna say, no, I don't want you to touch my surface anymore, and I'm going to completely fray. I am luckily working on Strathmore, which is a good enough quality that, ooh, see that little piece? Just one little piece and a little couple here. Oh, that's nice. So let's try to be more selective. Little dash here, dash here. This whole area needs to be darker. Tiny bit of water just to make it go further. Where else can we be selective? Right here. There and there. There's little areas of complete white, and I'm not sure that's the best idea, but it's not horrible. Let's do down the side here, and then a tiny bit of And then on the other side of this branch, just at the top, in kind of this weird triangle shape, and maybe a tiny bit right here. This is still my favorite frond. Oh my goodness, that's nice. All right, here we have big areas of black or dark value. I'm really using a lot of my paint today, and that's fine. That's kind of nice. It's good to use your materials. Don't be afraid. Okay. So this sketch is already laid out below, and I'm just kind of going over it. I'm not really having to focus on drawing it all. I'm just kind of finding the darkest spots and repeating what I've already done. This whole area should be darker. Darker. And up here, let's do triangle here, another little spiky triangle, and a clump. Going like this. And then on the side, there's just this one dash here, and another dash at the very top. Gosh, this whole area is so dark. We have to be almost done. There's only so far you can push a painting, especially in watercolor. It's not like we can layer indefinitely. I'm gonna step back. I think it's missing right up here. Literally just like roughly sketching. There we go, this whole area. There we go. It's kind of more piecey up here, little bits of, there's some more detail in here than anywhere else in the painting, I feel. Can make a little bit of a drawing here. It's kind of our focal point, I guess. This too. This whole area. Dark, 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 and very warm. Anything, if you want anything to appear closer to you, then push it more warm, and cool will recede. So anything you want to look farther away, push your cool values. Get a bit of phthalo green in here. Phthalo mixed with that red is super strong. So stop making tiny little pieces. We agreed we were going to make clumps. We already did the piecey part. Now we just have to kind of simplify it. Well, we might have overworked it. I mean, that's my #1 issue with watercolors. I always feel like I've overworked it, but I'm quite happy with the way this is looking right now. If you have any more requests of different subject matter in a particular medium, let me know. Let's take a little zoom in look. Thanks for joining me to paint the watercolor palm tree today. I hope you're having a lovely painty day wherever you are, and I'll see you again in the studio soon.